Just so you know, I'm the last person that would ever want to stand between you guys and a cocktail. So we'll try to make this as valuable as possible and be efficient. I'm Andy Penley. I'm the group CTO for Boldyn. Is this my clicker here? Okay. So just to put it into context, I won't do a commercial, sort of who Boldyn is, how we play in the game for connected cities. We're one of the world's largest neutral hosts. We specialize in connected cities. If you look at the two largest transit systems in the Western Hemisphere, we run both the DAS for both of those, and with an additional smart city overlay, and those will be New York and London. You can see here, we're going to talk about two of these today, look through two of the use cases. We're going to try to share a little bit of wisdom, which is, I think somebody said that's the name men gave to mistakes. And we've made lots of them. So maybe you can learn from our mistakes instead of having to learn from your own. We have more cities than this. The two we're going to talk about today, though, are New York City and Rome. Now, they kind of came about in different ways. New York City, BAI at the time owned Transit, who had the MTA, and Zenfi Networks we were the underlying infrastructure provider for City Bridge, which did a kiosk deployment. Since then, we've bought half of City Bridge, but we've been in it since the beginning. So in 2013, de Blasio put out an RFP. And what they wanted to do was replace payphones, right? Nobody was using them anymore. The only value they had, some of them had some advertising value. They were existing conduit there. So they put out an RFP for innovative solutions to replace it. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. We were part of a group that was Intersection, Sidewalk Labs, Qualcomm, Titan, some others, and we won it. And the unit we designed was we'll get to in a second. But here's my first piece of wisdom is two things. Don't just think about your customer, think about your end user, right? And we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but you really want to think about, even though it's, the pedestrian that's using it is not who's paying you for the service. You really want to think about them and the end user experience from day one. We had some misses on that in some of the service we provided. This is pretty powerful. I hate to read my slides, but make sure you're catching that bar graph on the right there. That's the total number of citizens in those cities. And then you'll see the number of citizens in New York that don't have broadband and cellular service in their homes. When we think about digital divide, I think we all think about, maybe Montana or somewhere where it's just not commercially feasible to deploy connectivity, or, other countries or things like that. This is New York City. So 18% had nothing. They had no Wi-Fi in their home. They had no cellular service in their home. That's a big problem, right? Access to connectivity should be a human right, right? The disadvantages of not having that access have been documented very well. So there was a real need here. In addition to the connectivity, which came in the form of a gigabit access point, free Wi-Fi, even in the field, we've gotten 900 plus throughput on those. At the time, we were deploying Wi-Fi 5, of course. So the other services we were putting on there were, there's a call button for 911. There's a tablet where citizens could access the internet. Another piece of wisdom, originally it was completely open. You could access anything on the internet. Lessons learned, we had to close that down to more of a city services kind of thing, social services kind of thing for some obvious reasons. There's a port to charge your phone. You can make international phone calls for free. 15.8 million. That's a pretty impressive number there, right? The program was successful, and I think I'll touch on this in another slide. But when we went into COVID, a large number of citizens reported that their only access to the internet was through the links. Students were using it. We could look at, obviously, it's anonymized, but we could look at the devices that were connected. It wasn't phones, right? It was computers, it was extenders, it was everything people were using just to get access to their homes. We, in addition to this, we built gigabit centers, 5 of them, 1 in each borough with free gigabit access points, and space for people to learn and work. So the program was really successful. We did run into some issues. So originally when the program was designed, me and Al was a part of a lot of these problems, right, Al? So when the program was designed, we were going to get all the revenue we needed from advertising. That was the first mistake. We were going to deploy 7,500 to 10,000. We had already saturated the market at about 1,800. We agreed to some minimum annual guaranteed payments. And boy, that's the kicker. When we look at cities that want to do this smart connectivity, I've seen everything from a city that wants $40 million to a city that's willing to invest $40 million, right? And what you really have to do is work with the city to figure out what they want out of this, right? If they're looking for revenue, then you need to be completely empowered to deploy any way you need to generate your own revenue. If they're looking for smart outcomes, if they're looking to bridge the digital divide, if they're looking to, there is a well-documented fact that communities that have highly dense, highly accessible fiber benefit economically, education, medicine, business development. Those are the benefits the city should be seeking, right? So when you go into these things, it's important to really be eyes wide open. And if it's competitive, don't dive to the bottom, right? If everybody's going to dive to the bottom, make these outrageous guarantees for revenue for the city, it's not commercially sustainable in the end. So for all those reasons, plus, a global pandemic, this program shut down for a while. In 2021, Zenfi, which is a Boldyn company that was purchased, we went in and we committed $50 million to the program to bring it back around. But we needed some concessions from the city for us to be able to do that, to make it commercially viable. The original structure you see there in the photo, that's 9.5 feet tall. That space where the access point is not it's not good enough for any sort of cellular service for carriers, only for maybe a neutral host solution, which we're trying to implement now in those structures. So one of the concessions we asked the city for was, we need to be able to design a new structure. We want all the commercial rights to the wireless carriers, and they gave in on that. This is a structure I designed. Not everybody loves it. It's big. It's 32 feet tall. Now, keep in mind, this is in between the 2 auctions, right? So this is after the millimeter wave auction, where they had, the carriers spent $7-point-something billion, largest auction ever. They're definitely committed to millimeter wave, right? So we designed this thing to stack millimeter wave on top of millimeter wave on top of millimeter wave. There was never going to be another auction that big, right? Until there was, just a few years later, when there was a $95 billion auction, I think, for C-band. So again, when you go in, like when we went into this, we planned for the worst, which would, millimeter wave would get put on hold, which it has. We made sure it was commercially sustainable for us. One advantage we have, we're owned 80% by the Canadian Pension Fund. They're very well capitalized. They're patient investors. We have no event horizon coming. We're in for the long haul. So we're being very patient. We're very comfortable to come back, but these are the kind of things that you really have to plan for and be ready for. So, it probably stalled our, what we thought would be a tenancy rate. I think it probably slowed it down by 2 or 3 years. It's going to continue. We're going to build out to about 4,500 of them. The 4,000 for sure, maybe 4,500. We've got a carrier we're installing on now. They're expensive structures. They have a ton of capacity. We can put, there's 5 RF transparent bays that are large enough to support any commercially available millimeter wave radio that's used for small cell, even macro millimeter waves, which Verizon uses. The digital divide, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. I knew we were going to come back and touch on this. The big thing for me here was what we did in COVID. In addition to this, we looked at building, mesh networks that leveraged link. We're still looking at that into, there's a lot of the digital divide in New York is driven by the cost of digging the streets up. So if there's no licensable, accessible point of entry into a building, that's a pretty large expense at $200, $250 a foot to install that conduit, right? And then obviously the cabling inside the building adds on to that. You need to provide a pretty low cost service, and it becomes unviable pretty quickly. What we're looking at now is using the link for either with V-band or E-band or CBRS to mesh, and even our Wi-Fi 7 to mesh with the buildings to provide indoor service. Provide free repeaters to low-income families that have line of sight, things like that. So we're still really trying to leverage these units. We need it to be commercially viable. We're a for-profit business, but it's also very important to us to continue to try to help the community and to solve the digital divide. This one, I touched on this a little bit earlier. I'm really passionate about it. I'm sure most of you already know, but it's very easy to find statistics on the advantages of having highly accessible fiber in communities. That's it. It also is a big step in bridging the digital divide, but it also, it boosts the economy, education, medicine. I mean, it's undeniable the positive return on this. And if you can see here, there's those cables you see there. Those aren't 144s. Those are 1728s running parallel up and down the avenues in Manhattan. I mean, we actually developed our own fiber cable architecture to make it highly accessible. So it's a tube wrapped cable. It's well used now, but it went in 2014. So we can blow new fiber in. We don't have to overbuild from splice cases. Accessibility is just as important as capacity. We have one stat, I think, out of 3,300 intersections in New York City, we can drop a pair of fiber at about 2,800 of them without an overbuild. So that, you look at New York City, that was sort of an amalgamation, right? We built a link program. Boldyn bought us, BA bought us, rebranded as Boldyn. They own transit. Now we're integrating the transit system in the MTA with the link platform. One important thing when you're looking at doing smart city solutions, smart connectivity for cities, is to look at what assets the cities have under control, right? I'm part of a group within TIPS, a neutral host group that was started this year, and we're taking a look at how to help cities deploy. And this is one of the things we talk about a lot. It really isn't about the number of people there, right? It's not about the population. It's more about population density. And it's also about assets under control. So Rome has the advantage of they control everything. So in New York, you've got the state that has the MTA, you have the city that has the streetscape, you have the Port Authority that has the path. There's a lot of people, a lot of competing priorities there. In Rome, the city of Rome controls everything. So in 2023, the mayor of Rome, I would tell you his name, but I have a Southern accent, and when I say things that are Italian, it sounds horrible. So the mayor of Rome, by the way, 2025 is the Pope's Jubilee. The Catholic people here probably know that. If you're not Catholic, they expect an additional 35 million tourists. So, average annual tourism in Rome is about 7,000. Next year, they expect about 35,000 additional. So in 2023, we signed a deal with Rome, but this was different. They controlled the metro, they controlled the streetscapes, they controlled everything. If you've ever been to Rome, I'm sure most of you have, they have the worst cellular service on the planet. Central Rome is horrible. And the reason is because they have stopped allowing the carriers to do rooftop deployments for many years. To try to preserve the heritage, right? It's a double World Heritage site. So the coverage is terrible. They were going to have 35 million additional tourists. So the mayor there signed a deal with Boldyn to do a full smart city deployment. So we're actually going to deploy some sites this year. There's 9 on the Metro Ace line in Rome. There's 9 train stations that are called the Jubilee stations that serve the Vatican. We're trying to do a full DAS for those 9 stations before the end of the year. So if you caught that, we signed the deal in December 2023, and we're trying to have 9 stations up before the end of 2024. So you guys that deployed DAS know that's a pretty tough to hoe. It's pretty aggressive. We also agreed on these squares you see there to have 30 of those up, the 30 that have a priority there. To give you an idea what the squares are, there's historical squares throughout Rome. Think about like in front of the Colosseum or Trevi Fountain or things like that. We agreed to have the first 30 of the 100 up. The rest of this is more forward thinking. We want to do 2,000 small cell locations. We would be the neutral host provider there with power, connectivity, and real estate. The carriers would bring their own radios. And then we want to also do, part of the project is to do 2,000 security cameras, leveraging the infrastructure in the squares, and then an additional 1,800 sensors for IoT. This is a full city solution, right? I've seen a lot of these. I don't know if I've ever seen one quite as robust and whole as Rome is. And it's really good that, when you go into these things, it's really good to have a really motivated mayor. I'll tell you, the mayor that comes up with the idea is going to help you a lot more than the mayor that takes his place. So one of our top 5 items on our risk profile when we look at these things is, when's the next election, right? If it's before we can get 20% of it deployed, boy, that's a big risk because we don't know if the next mayor is going to be motivated to support us. But it's a really exciting project. In the metro, we're doing 67 kilometers of tunnels. All the stations, I think it's 83 or 86 stations. And we have 5 years to complete all of this. I think we have a 2 to 3 year build plan. We'll see how that goes. One piece of advice I would give you is, just like the Link program, whatever you designed when you started this, that ain't what's getting deployed. I guarantee you what you started with is not what's going to be deployed at the end. Something's going to change. You got to be agile. You got to be willing to pivot. You need to be really conservative in your commercial estimates to make sure you can withstand these changes and pivots. In the squares, we're going to use the existing infrastructure. There's poles around these squares. We're going to do the Wi-Fi first and the small cell second, but we're provisioning multiple poles in those squares for the small cells, so we can do a single build there. We're deploying Wi-Fi 7, which is very aggressive right now, even on the initial squares. Right now, the European Union's good with 6 gigahertz. I think Germany's approved it. We expect Italy to approve soon thereafter. There's no approval yet, but we wanted to sort of future-proof, and we'd like to push out our refresh to 8 or 9 years, as opposed to everybody adopts 7, and now in 3 or 4 or 5 years we have to do a refresh. I was trying to cut time, and I'm going to run over. The small cells we're going to do, we could do it a few different ways. I think with the space we have, we're going to end up with probably a neutral radio, right? Nobody's going to buy into that today. We'll have to push them and get them there, but that would really be the best solution. But the rest of it is pretty standard small cell deployment using those poles. I think we're going to deploy some smart poles outside of the very central Rome. Nobody will ever let you put those in central Rome. When you look at what we're doing here, one thing I think is you really got to put it into context, right? That's a 2,500-year-old city we're doing this in. Everything was pretty much destroyed in World War II, but everything, all the ducts, all the infrastructure there is World War II, right? And it's a really elegant technical solution in one of the most, or the most possibly most historic cities on Earth. So that's the summary there. I won't go back through it. We're trying to cut a little bit of time here, but if anybody has any quick questions, I'll be happy to answer. No, all right, thank you.
Any questions? Great job. Thank you very much. Thank you. Don't go away, because the questions might come in later on. Yes, we have questions back in here. Don't on mic him yet. Yes.
Okay. For the 2,000 small cells, are those all in one each one for multiple operators?
So that, yeah, we don't know. Right now what they would like to do is put their own radio in there and have connectivity back to their own hub. I don't think that's feasible. I think we'd be much better doing a digital solution with shared radio infrastructure amongst the carriers, right? Yeah, but it's undecided, but I think that's the right way to go. Yeah.
Okay, any other question for Andy before we let him go? He's not going to leave, by the way. He's going to be around and he's going to be going to the reception as well. I recognize the gentleman back there for the question. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to know for vendor selection for the access points and for the small cells, has that already been completed? If so, who did you choose and why?
I don't know if we've announced that publicly.
Okay.
It wouldn't be hard to figure out. We're deploying Wi-Fi 7 and we're going to deploy it this year. So if you look at roadmaps, you can probably figure out pretty quick who it is. Anybody else?
We have another question from Angelo. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to ask whether they are planning some smart services for the citizen, or it's just infrastructure for pedestrians or moving people. And the second question is, of course, the air pollution in Rome is significant. Do they have some activities around this implementation to reduce CO2 emissions?
I'm not sure I heard the second question. The first one, there's a lot of opportunity to expand the project, to do more smart solutions for the city. Obviously, you know, I was sort of touching on that with the fiber, right? Once you get that connectivity in there, we start getting, you know, we have a highly accessible network. It's easy for us to continue to develop smart solutions for the city. I didn't get the second question.
Yes, the second was how far this infrastructure can be used to measure or to reduce CO2 emissions in the city.
So part of the sensor network is going to be air quality sensors. You know, I'm sure they'll use that for analytics to help develop that. That's not part of our scope, just because, you know, we're more the infrastructure side.
Thank you for the questions. Let's give another hand to Andy. Let's get one more question. Okay, sorry. Andy, don't go away. We got one more question for you. You're a popular guy.
Sorry, I'm in the corner and you can't see me. Just
Please.
one more.
Thank you, Maria. Please go ahead.
I don't know if I got the difference right, but I got the impression in New York you're laying down your own fiber, and in Rome you're using third-party fiber infrastructure. Is that correct?
Are you asking if we own the fiber infrastructure in Italy? Yeah. So we did do an IRU, a 25-year IRU with a right to renew on a ring that was already there. But all the other fiber infrastructure, tunnels, stations, squares, subrings, things like that will be ours.
And Rome is, I thought you said the third-party fiber infrastructure in Rome?
Yeah, there's a center ring that's IRU, so it's technically our asset, I guess. But that's that third-party fiber infrastructure.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Maria. Great questions. All right, so